Okay, welcome to today's lecture, Financial Market and Institutions. So this is my email. If there is anything you want to find out, you can always email me. So today we are looking at monetary policy. So at the end of this lecture, you should be able to describe the mechanics of monetary policy. You should be able to explain the trade-off involved in monetary policy. You should be able to describe how financial market participants respond to the Fed policy. So Fed here means the Federal Reserve System. It is used by the United States. In Malaysia, they call it Bank Negara. Also to explain how monetary policy is affected by the global environment. So when you read the slide later on, you ask yourself all of this. Are you able to answer this question? So if you are able to describe, explain all of these objectives using the information in the slides, so it shows that you understand the lecture of today. So let's start with the mechanics of monetary policy. So we start with monitoring indicators of economic growth, because economic growth is an indication of how the economy is performing. So a higher economic growth means that the economy is doing well, while a low economic growth means that the economy is not doing well. So monetary policy is formulated in such a way as to stimulate this economic growth. But this economic growth is too broad. The Monetary Policy Authority, they need to target some specific indicators in order to achieve economic growth. So one of these indicators that they target is called the GDP. So GDP of a country measures the total value of goods and services produced during a specific period. So if this GDP is increasing, it's an indication that the economy is growing. Another indicator is the national income. So national income is the total income earned by firms and individual employees during a specific period of time. So if the national income is growing, we can deduce or we can conclude that the economy is growing. Another indicator of economic growth is unemployment rate. So unemployment rate is maintain a low of unemployment rate in the US, not only in the US, in all parts of the world. So the Monetary Policy Authority will try to make unemployment rate to be very low. If the unemployment rate is very low, it means the economy is growing well. So there are other indicators that are also monitored by the Monetary Authority. They include industrial production index, retail sales index, and home sales index. So all of these index, if they are growing, it means that the economy of the country is growing as a result of good monetary policy. But bad monetary policy may affect all these indicators negatively. So under the monitoring indicators of economic growth, we have what we call index of leading economic indicators. So this index of leading economic indicators can be subdivided into three main divisions. So one of them is the leading economic indicator. So as the name suggests, it means they are important. Leading economic indicator, they predict the future economic activity. So you will see them later in the next slide. So if all these indicators are doing well, you can predict that in the future, these leading economic indicators will continue to do well. And it is good for the economy. We have another type of leading economic indicators called coincident economic indicators. So as the name suggests, they tend to reach their peaks and their trough at the same time as a business cycle. So it means that these coincident economic indicators, two things is achieved simultaneously. Peak means the highest point, that is the top. The trough means the lower point, just as in the case of the business cycle. So business cycle goes up, comes down. So coincident indicators, sometimes it goes up, it also comes down. Another type of leading economic indicators is called lagging economic indicators. So lagging economic indicators tend to rise or fall a few months after business cycle expansion and contraction. So the key word here is rise or fall a few months after the business cycle. That is, they are slow. So these indicators, they don't respond immediately. They take time before they are impacting the economy. So these are the example of all of these indicators. So under the leading index, we have 1, 2, up to 10 indicators. Under the coincident index, we have 4 indicators. And under the lagging index, we have 7 indicators. So later on, you can look into them to know example of each category. Now, very important, when conducting monetary policy, it is important to monitor inflation, indicators of inflation. Why? Because inflation, if it is too high, it can reduce the economic growth. Moderate inflation is good because it makes the economy to grow, but too much inflation can create a lot of problems. It can create instability in the country. This example of monitoring indicators of inflation are producer and consumer price index. So producer price index represent prices at the wholesale level, and the consumer price index represent prices paid by customers. So if inflation is rising every year in a country, it's a bad sign. So it shows that the monetary policy adopted is not effectively checking or controlling the inflation, because one of the goals of monetary policy is to keep inflation very low. But if the inflation is going very high, it means that the monetary policy is not effective. There are other indicators of inflation, but these are the 2 common ones, producer and consumer price index. They are the 2 common ones, but there are others, inflation indicators. So one of them is called the wage rates. So wage rates are the periodically reported in various regions. So if the wages of a country is increasing, that is the salary of the workers, if it is increasing regularly, even though it looks good, it can cause inflation because there will be too much money in the hand of people. And if there is too much money in the hand of people, it can lead to inflation. Because those who are selling, they will increase prices because they already heard of the news that wages has been increased. So most times, whenever wages increase, those who are selling, they will increase the price because they also want to take part of the share of the increase in wages. Another indicators of inflation or another inflation indicators is oil prices. So oil prices can signal future inflation because they affect the cost of some forms of production, as well as transportation cost, and the price paid by consumer for gasoline. So whenever there is an increase in oil price, it tends to affect the prices of other products. Why? Because most of the things that we buy, they are indirectly influenced by the oil prices. If the oil prices increase, the businesses will increase their price because it costs the business more to produce due to the increase in oil price. So they will push the increase in the prices to the consumers in form of higher prices. The price of gold is also other inflation indicator. It is closely monitored because gold prices tend to move in tandem with inflation. So based on observation over the years, whenever the price of gold goes up, it tends to move in line with the inflation. So in some cases, indicators of economic growth are also used to indicate inflation. So in some cases, all the indicators of economic growth that we have talked about in the previous slide, they can also cause inflation. This type of inflation is called demand pull inflation. So demand pull inflation occurs when excessive spending pull up prices. So when there is more spending, this overspending will make prices to be up. More demand tends to create increase in price. Now, implementing monetary policy. So it is necessary to implement monetary policy, especially to check or to control indicators of inflation. So who is responsible for implementing this monetary policy? It is the central bank in different parts of the world. So different countries, they call their central bank different names. I think in Malaysia, they call it Bank Negara, and they have other subdivisions within the Bank Negara that effectively implement monetary policy. But in the United States, once the Federal Open Market Committee assesses economic condition, it can identify its main concern about the economy and determine the proper monetary policy that will alleviate its concerns. So in the case of the United States, it works as a committee. They call it FOMC. So they will look at the economy generally. Is the economy good? Is the economy bad? So if the economy is bad, they will think of the monetary policy strategy they will use to correct the problem. So monetary policy changes the money supply in order to influence the interest rate. So whenever the Federal Open Market Committee implement monetary policy, one of the ways they do that is to change the money supply. So later on in the subsequent slide, you will see how changes in the money supply can affect the interest rate. Why is it important to increase money supply to affect interest rate? Because interest rate is related to the cost of finance. So if money supply increases, it tends to make the interest rate to fall. So if interest rate falls, it encourages business to borrow at a lower rate. So there will be more business expansion, more people are employed, more output are produced, and the economy grows. On the other hand, if the money supply decreases, it tends to create increase in the interest rate. If the monetary authority reduces the money supply, it tends to increase the interest rate. Increase in interest rate will increase the cost of borrowing. As a result, companies or businesses will not be able to borrow, which means that there will be a reduction in output. If there's reduction in output, it might also affect some employees and it will reduce the economic growth. So which policy to implement depends on the economic condition. Whether to increase the money supply or reduce the money supply, it depends on the economic condition that is prevailing. Okay, effect of a stimulative monetary policy. In the previous slide, I told you that supposing there is an increase in money supply. So this is example of stimulative monetary policy. So when you stimulate, it means you are increasing the monetary policy. So this stimulative monetary policy tries to boost the economy, to make the economy to grow. The supply curve of loanable funds indicates the quantity of funds that will be supplied at that time at various possible interest rates. So with a stimulative monetary policy, the Fed increases the supply of funds in the banking. As you can see, by increasing money supply, they increase supply of funds in the banking system, which can increase the level of businesses' investment and hence aggregate spending in the economy. So look at this diagram. So this diagram explains what happens when there is an increase in money supply. You can see effect of an increase in money supply. That is, you are trying to stimulate the economy. Supposing money supply shifts from S1 to S2. So whenever there is a movement to the right, it shows increase. Movement to the left shows decrease. So by the quantity of loanable fund moving from S1 to S2, you can see that a new equilibrium is created. And if you trace the new equilibrium to the interest rate line, you can see that there is a decrease from I1 to I2. So increase in money supply, what it does is that it reduces the interest rate. Now, let us trace it out. At the equilibrium interest rate of I1, you can see I1 here, we can trace it to this line. When there is a decrease in the quantity of loanable fund or money supply, you can see that a new equilibrium is established. So we can trace this new equilibrium back to this second graph. Can you see it? So which indicate that there is an increase from B1 to B2. So increase from B1 to B2 indicate that there is business investment. So level of business investment has increased. So to summarize, whenever there is an increase in money supply, it reduces interest rate, and reduction in interest rate boosts business activities. So that is why there is an increase from B1 to B2. So impact of interest rate. Focusing on stimulative monetary policy. The quantity of loanable fund supply exceeds the quantity of loanable fund demanded. The interest rate will decline to equilibrium. The logic behind the impact on interest rate: the depository institution experience an increase in supply of funds. Therefore, they borrow less funds or provide more short-term loan at lower interest rates. So trying to explain why the interest rate declines here. So this reason for this decline is explained in this slide with this logic. Because if there's more money in circulation, people can borrow. That is, businesses can borrow at a less fund. They can borrow less fund, or they can provide more short-term loan at a lower interest rate. So the logic behind the effect of business cost of debt. As business cost of debt decreases, firms implement more projects and spend more money. Why? Because the cost of debt has declined. So they are motivated to borrow more for expansion. This results in more income to individuals or other firms, which allow more people to invest in the original economy. So any monetary policy that end up in cost reduction in cost of debt, they stimulate business expansion. Stimulative monetary policy also affects cost of equity. Firm cost of equity is positively related to the risk-free rate. Therefore, lower risk-free rate will be equals to lower cost of equity. So whichever way, a stimulative monetary policy reduce cost of debt, reduce cost of equity. As a result, more money is available to businesses for expansion. And even investors also, or the business also, they can actually borrow at a reduced cost from investors. To summarize the effect of stimulative monetary policy, any effect on the treasury or the risk-free rate influences cost of debt and cost of equity. We've already explained it in the previous slide. So cost of capital is reduced because cost of capital is made up of cost of debt and cost of equity. So if cost of equity is affected, cost of capital also will be affected. Reducing required return on cost of products, because if the cost of raising money is less, then the cost of producing goods will also be less. This will encourage firms to spend more money and hire more employees. So you can see the chain reaction. Now, so this diagram summarizes how the Federal Reserve can stimulate the economy, while in the case of Malaysia, how the Bank Negara can stimulate the economy. So let's look at this diagram. If the Federal Reserve System or the Bank Negara reduce the interest rate, what happened is that the firm cost of debt will decrease. Also, the firm cost of equity will decrease. As a result of this decrease, what happened is that the firm cost of capital will decrease. So the firm can borrow at a cheaper rate. If firm can borrow at a cheaper rate, then the firm's required return on its project will also decrease. Because of this decrease in the project, the cost of firm required return on the project decreases, it causes the firms to implement more projects. So implementing more projects ultimately leads to economic growth. So you can see the direction of how a stimulative monetary policy in the form of increased money supply can translate into increase in more projects. So the Fed policy or Bank Negara policy focuses on long-term maturities. Now, there's a reason for this. It is called Operation Twist strategy, whereby the Fed sold holdings of short-term treasury securities and used the proceeds to purchase long-term treasury securities, because emphasis is on the long term. So because the emphasis is on the long term, because when the business borrow, they borrow on a long term. So making the interest rate on long-term treasury securities to be attractive to business is a good strategy. So the theory is that you increase the short-term interest rate and you decrease the long-term interest rate. So by decreasing the long-term interest rate, you're actually encouraging more business investment, because the interest rate is cheaper. Expected result, firms more willing to borrow. Why? Because of decrease in the long-term interest rate. They are willing to borrow funds for spending on new projects, therefore stimulating the economy and creating jobs. So you can see that because businesses exist for a long time. So if you make the short-term interest rate to be low, it's not attractive to the business, because some businesses have existed for 50 years, some for 100 years. So they need to borrow for long term. And the project takes time before the money started coming in. So the cheaper they can get the debt financing for a long term, the better for the business. Why a stimulative monetary policy might fail? Now, remember what we have described in the previous slide up to this slide 15. We have been able to establish that if the Federal Reserve System, the Fed, or Bank Negara wants to stimulate the economy, they can increase the money supply. They call it stimulative monetary policy. But sometimes this policy may not work. And the reason why it may not work or it might fail is because of limited credit provided by the banks. Sometimes, even though the Fed or the Bank Negara is trying to stimulate the economy, some financial institutions, they don't help the government. They will still be reluctant to lend to investors that need the money for investment. So if many institutions behave this way, the positive impact of this stimulative monetary policy might not be achieved. Even if the Fed increase the level of bank fund, banks may be unwilling to extend credit. This is a bad behavior, but sometimes some banks, they behave this way and it hurts the economy. So sometimes when the country is not doing well, the fault is not only from the government. The fault can also be from the banks as well. Another reason why stimulative monetary policy might fail is because of low return on savings. Low returns on savings. Low returns on savings. Low return on savings means lower interest income translate to lower spending. So let's say Maybank is offering you maybe 2% on every savings that you make. If the savings is too low, then you will not be able to purchase more. But if the interest on your saving is very high, so it means your money will grow in the banks. If your money grow in the bank, then you can withdraw more money and spend. So low return on savings can also make stimulative monetary policy to fail. And very importantly, adverse effects on inflation. So stimulative monetary policy may sometimes create inflation. Effect of increase in money supply growth may be disrupted due to an increase in inflationary expectations. So based on economic research and theory, it is generally believed that when there is increase in money supply, it tends to trigger increase in inflation. An increase in inflation will cause instability in a country. So let's look at this graph. So this graph tries to explain the effect of an increase in money supply according to rational expectation theory. So what this theory says is summarized in this graph. The x-axis is the quantity of loanable fund, let's say in the United States, for example, while the vertical is the interest rate. It can be interest rate of any country. So assuming it is US interest rate. So there is a shift in the quantity of loanable fund from S1 to S2. Movement from S1 to S2 shows increase in quantity of loanable fund. So you can see due to this increase, there is also an increase in demand for loanable fund from D1 to D2. It's also a shift to the right. So money supply or quantity of loanable fund shifts to the right, and quantity of demand for loanable fund also shift to the right. So we have a new equilibrium. Despite the new equilibrium, we still maintain the same level of interest rate. So what this theory is saying is that whenever there is an increase in the quantity of loanable fund supplied, it triggers an increase in demand for loanable fund as well. And the net impact of increase in the money supply and the money demand will still make the interest rate to remain unchanged at the same level. So that is what this theory is saying. Now we are looking at the reverse, implementing restrictive monetary policy. So restrictive monetary policy means that you are trying to reduce, you are trying to reduce excessive growth. Sometimes a country might be growing too fast, and excessive growth is also not good because it can also create problem later on. So whenever the economy is growing too fast, the monetary authorities, they can use restrictive monetary policy. So restrictive monetary policy means that they increase the risk-free interest rate. So whenever there is an increase in the risk-free interest rate, it will increase corporate cost of financing. And when there is an increase in corporate cost of financing, it will decrease the level of business investment. So this is not very common, but sometimes it happens. It happens. As economic growth is slowed, inflationary pressure may be reduced. Because when the economy is growing too well, things are going too good, everybody is okay, it can cause inflation. And trying to reduce inflation, most of the time, the monetary authority, they will increase the risk-free interest rate. And this will slow down rapid economic growth in order to reduce inflationary pressure. Okay, so look at this diagram. So this diagram is the opposite of what we have in one of the previous slides. You can see in this case, the reverse is a change. If there is a reduction in the quantity of loanable fund supplied from S1 to S2, so you can see this is a decrease because we are moving to the left, a decrease. So what happened is that there is a change in the initial equilibrium. So initially, the equilibrium interest rate is high 1, but due to the decrease in the supply or quantity of loanable funds supplied in the United States, we see an increase in the interest rate. So because of the increase in interest rate, it will cause a reduction in business investment. So you can see now, due to the increase in the interest rate from I1 to I2, it has caused a decline in the level of business investment from B1 to B2. So if you are moving towards the left, you are decreasing. If you are moving towards the right, you are increasing. So let me show you the other slide for the expansion, then you can see the difference. Okay, you still remember this? You can see B1 to B2. So this one shows level of business increase in this case. But this one, this is for a stimulative monetary policy. But for the other one, you can see there's a decrease from B1 to B2 as a result of decrease in money supply from S1 to S2. Okay, so summary of the monetary policy effect. So what can we summarize? So the Fed or Bank Negara can affect economic condition through its influence on the supply of loanable funds. Lag effect of monetary policy. So monetary policy doesn't immediately affect the economy, even though the desired goal of the monetary authority is to make the monetary policy to affect the economy as fast as possible, but it always takes some delay. So this delay is summarized as recognition lag. So recognition lag means lag between the time a problem arises and the time it is recognized. Another type of lag or delay is implementation lag. The lag from the time a serious problem is recognized until the time the Fed implements a policy to resolve the problem. It's not always immediate, it takes time. The impact lag, lag until the policy has its full impact on the economy. So a good policy, no matter how good, will not immediately affect the economy. It takes some time before the impact is felt. Sometimes it takes 6 months, sometimes it takes 1 year, sometimes it even takes 2 years before the impact of a good monetary policy can be impacted on the economy. Okay. So now, how monetary policy can affect economic condition. So if you look at this two flow diagram, we can see a situation of stimulative monetary policy and restrictive monetary policy. For the stimulative monetary policy, you can see that the Federal Reserve, whenever they want to stimulate the economy, what they do is that they sell treasury bills. So when they sell treasury bills, they receive dollars by selling, and they're actually injecting more money in the economy. You're injecting more money in the economy. So when they inject more money in the economy, what happens is that the bank funds will increase, the interest rate will decrease, the aggregate spending will increase, and this will impact economic growth. On the other hand, there can be a restrictive monetary policy. So in the case of a restrictive monetary policy, what the Fed does is that they buy back the treasury bills. So by buying back the treasury bills, what happens is that bank fund will decrease. As bank fund decrease, interest rate will increase. As interest rate increase, aggregate spending will decrease, and decrease in aggregate spending will also cause inflation decrease. So this is how, whether we use stimulative monetary policy or restrictive monetary policy, how the channel through which it ultimately affects the economy is shown in this flow diagram. There is a trade-off in monetary policy, and this trade-off is very important. Ideally, the Fed would like to achieve both a very low level of unemployment and a very low level of inflation, because the unemployment rate and inflation rate, they are inversely related. So meaning that whenever there is increase in inflation, you will have lower unemployment. Whenever there is increase in unemployment or reduction in unemployment, you may have higher inflation. So they are inversely related. So there's an inverse relationship between inflation and unemployment. So you will see later in the next diagram. Strong economic condition is usually followed by high inflation, then low unemployment. It is not high. One is high, the other is low. Weak economic condition is linked to low inflation, then high unemployment. So whenever you see low inflation in the country and high unemployment, it shows that the economy is weak. But when you see high inflation but low unemployment, it shows that the economic condition is strong. The impact of other forces on the trade-off. So there are historical data on annual information and unemployment rate showing that when one of these problems was seen, the other does not automatically improve. So this diagram shows, you can see from this diagram, the y-axis is inflation, the x-axis is unemployment. So let's say we are at this level of inflation, let's say 9%. You can trace it down. You can see unemployment is low. Higher inflation, low unemployment. So let's say we are here. At this level, you can see that inflation is around 3%. So, but unemployment is 8%. So this graph tells us that the relationship between inflation and unemployment is inverse, meaning that it is difficult for any country to simultaneously achieve low inflation, low unemployment, very difficult. Similarly, it is difficult for the country to simultaneously achieve unemployment, low inflation. So if you succeed in this, you have this problem. If you succeed in lowering unemployment, you have inflation. So this is why sometimes it is difficult to manage an economy. So which of them to focus on? It depends on the economic condition. Sometimes the economic condition might suggest that it is better to keep inflation low. While sometimes, based on the prevailing economic condition, it will suggest that it is better to keep unemployment low. So now, in the case of this diagram, you can see it's only one, but in the case of slide 24, we have two curves here. So what it means is that even though there is an increase in the curve to the right, from this red color to the blue color, the inverse relationship between inflation and unemployment still remains, no matter the time. This line is always downward sloping. Even if you move to this point, it will still be downward sloping to establish the fact that there is an inverse relationship between inflation and unemployment. So this curve can go to the right, it can come to the left, but it is always downward sloping. So a shift in the money supply over time, referring to this graph. For example, there was a focus on improving a weak economy in 2001 to 2003. At this period correspond with the bubble burst, internet.com. The internet was causing some problem in 2001 because the bubble busted within this period, and there was a problem during this period. In order to solve this problem, as at that point in time, the United States focused on reducing inflation. So between 2004 and 2007, based on what happened in 2001 and 2003, which was partly caused by inflation. So between the period of 2004 to 2007, they have to reduce inflation. So when they reduce the inflation in 2004 to 2007, they enter into another period of 2008 crisis. Now, this time around, they focus on improving the weak economy. So you can see that there's a cycle. When you try to solve one, within another time, you enter into another problem. So this is the challenges faced by the monetary authority. They solve one problem, they enter another problem. So it's a continuous process of balancing the economy. So how monetary policy responds to fiscal policy? Why monetary policy focuses on money supply and interest rate to stimulate the economy, the fiscal policy focuses on the taxes and government expenditure to stimulate the economy. But these two, sometimes they interact together. The Fed monetary policy is commonly influenced by the administration fiscal policies. So if fiscal pressure creates large budget deficit, this may place upward pressure on interest rate, and the Fed may feel pressured to use a stimulative monetary policy to reduce interest rates. So what it means is that sometimes a country that is using fiscal policy, the fiscal policy can create a problem whereby government need to spend due to budget deficit, because to correct this deficit, government has to borrow, and they have to borrow to finance this deficit. And this borrowing may force the monetary authority to use, because whenever government borrow, or whenever they have spent so much, interest rate may have been affected. And in order to reduce the interest rate, they have to use stimulative monetary policy in order to reduce the interest rate, because each time there's a deficit, government is motivated, or they have actually overspent. And because they overspend, it must have created an increase in interest rate. And this increase in interest rate has to be reduced using stimulative monetary policy, because stimulative monetary policy helps to reduce the interest rate. So fiscal policy shifts demand for loanable funds, but monetary policy has a larger impact on the supply of loanable funds. So take note of this distinction. To stimulate or to cause a shift in the demand for loanable fund, we use fiscal policy. But monetary policy is used, or it has a larger impact on the supply of loanable fund. So monetary policy, money supply. Fiscal policy, money demand. So this diagram explains the framework for explaining how monetary policy and fiscal policy affect interest rate over time. Let me make it bigger. So you can see the US monetary policy. What it does is that it affects the supply of fund. Monetary policy affects supply of fund. Supply of fund affect the interest rate. Whereas the fiscal policy goes through many channels. So the fiscal policy affects personal income tax rate. It also affects the budget deficit. It also affects the business tax rates. You can see that the personal income tax rate affects the personal income level. It also affects the savings of household. Why the US budget deficit affect government demand for funds. The business tax rate also affects the business demand for funds. The household demand for funds affect demand for funds. The government demand for funds affect demand for funds. And the business demand for funds also affect demand for funds. So ultimately, the interaction of supply of funds and demand for funds affect the interest rate. So you can see that the money supply is very fast. Straight away goes to money supply, then affect the interest rate. Whereas the fiscal policy goes through several channels before it finally affects the interest rate. So you can now see why sometimes monetary policy is commonly used because of the immediate impact it has. It doesn't have to go through all this channel. It just straight away target the money supply, then achieve its goal of either increasing or reducing the interest rate, depending on whether it is stimulative monetary policy or restrictive monetary policy. So if it is stimulative monetary policy, ultimately it will reduce the interest rate. But if it is restrictive monetary policy, it will ultimately increase the interest rate by reducing the money supply. Proposals to focus on inflation. Now, because of what we have explained in this curve, the problem between inflation and unemployment, many countries, they try to target inflation. That is, they see inflation as more serious. So many countries, many central banks in many countries, they tend to target the inflation. What are the advantages of doing this? Whenever there is a targeting of inflation, the Fed will no longer face a trade-off between controlling inflation and controlling unemployment. They only focus on inflation. They ignore unemployment because they feel that inflation is more serious. The Fed will not have to consider responding to any fiscal policy action because their focus is on inflation. And from what we have seen, if you want to control inflation, all you need to do is to reduce the money supply. You reduce the money supply, you can reduce the interest rate. So you reduce the money supply, you can increase the interest rate. And when you reduce money supply, you are also solving inflation problem. It's very fast you can do this. So by targeting monetary policy or inflation, you don't need to worry about all this. You can just go directly to affect your money supply, then your interest rate. Another advantage of inflation targeting, the Fed role will be more transparent and will lead to less uncertainty in the financial market because inflation causes uncertainty. And if you are able to keep inflation very low using the monetary policy or the stimulative monetary policy or restrictive monetary policy, then you can reduce uncertainty in the financial market. But there's a disadvantages of inflation targeting. So disadvantages is that the Fed could lose credibility, especially if inflation rate deviated substantially from the Fed target inflation rate. So sometimes the government may not be able to achieve low inflation rate regularly, and this may make them to lose some form of credibility. So what is the impact of monetary policy on financial market? So the impact of monetary policy on the financial market. Monetary policy affects the valuation of securities. So securities here means financial asset. Bond values are inversely related to the interest rate. So which means that as the interest rate increase, the bond value will decrease. As the interest rate decrease, the bond value will increase. So similarly, the stock value are also affected by the interest rate movement. Also, the impact on financial market can be seen from the Fed communication to the financial market. So the Fed usually communicate what they want to do. And as they make the communication, the financial market will also read meaning to the information. So the financial market constantly look for signal given by this open market committee. If the announcement is positive, the financial market will respond accordingly. If the announcement from the meeting is negative, the financial market will respond accordingly. So impact of the Fed also in response to oil shock. So whenever there is an oil shock, maybe a sudden increase in oil prices, any event that disrupts the world production of oil will also trigger inflation. Why? Because oil is used by businesses, it's used by the household, it's used by the government. So any increase in production for oil, it affects virtually the prices of all products. So the Fed does not have control over oil prices, but it can dampen or reduce any inflationary pressure if it slows economic growth. So because the government cannot control the world production of oil, but they can still do something to reduce the impact of the rising oil price using either the monetary policy especially. So the diagram here shows the channel through which the Fed Open Market Committee, you can see they monitor supply targets. And these supply targets can either be supply of loanable fund or money supply, or it can be inflationary expectations. So inflationary expectation is triggered by demand for loanable fund. And this will affect the equilibrium interest rate. So you can see the supply of loanable fund, demand for loanable fund, they affect the equilibrium interest rate. I already showed this in one of the graphs. So equilibrium interest rate will affect the cost of household credit, including the mortgage rates. Equilibrium interest rate will also affect the cost of capital for corporation. This cost of capital will affect household consumption. If the cost of capital or if the cost of household credit is too high, then the consumption will be less. But if the cost of household credit is less, consumption will be high. Cost of household credit will also affect residential construction, while the cost of capital for corporation will either cause corporate expansion, depending on whether the cost of capital is low. So if the cost of capital is low, there will be more expansion. If the cost of capital is high, there will be less expansion. And expansion will also affect the economic growth positively, while household consumption will also affect economic growth. So these are all the channels through which the impact is eventually felt on economic growth. So it goes through many channels. So impact of monetary policy across financial market. So this table identify types of financial market, money market. These are the relevant factors that are influenced by the monetary policy, while these are the key institutional participants. So these are the participants that play a role in the money market. So monetary policy will affect money market. You can see this impact here. It will affect the bond market. You can see what it will affect here. It will also affect the mortgage market as well as the stock market. You can now see why monetary policy is very, very important. Wrong monetary policy can cause problem in a country. Good monetary policy can stabilize the economy of a country. So monitoring the impact of monetary policy, impact of financial institutions. So when interest rates rise, we have already explained this, the cost of funds for financial institutions will also rise, and sometimes faster than the return they received. So in this instance, financial institutions such as commercial banks, bond mutual funds, etc., it will affect their portfolios. Their portfolios will be adversely affected when the Fed raises the interest rate. While for the stock mutual fund, insurance company, pension funds, they maintain large portfolio of stocks. So if the stock portfolio are also indirectly affected whenever there is a change in the interest rate. So it's trying to explain this table. So all the explanation is already here. So impact of the US dollar. So this is a bit different. Global monetary policy. So monetary policy has also gone global. So whenever central bank in one country is trying to formulate monetary policy, they will look at what is happening in other countries. For example, if the US economic conditions are weak, that is, the economy is not doing well, a weak dollar can stimulate the economy by stimulating the US export and discouraging the US import, because when the dollar is weak, it means people can buy cheap from the United States and their export will increase. If the US economic conditions are weak, a strong dollar will not provide the stimulus needed to improve conditions. The Fed may need to implement a stimulative monetary policy. Sometimes, even when the US economic conditions are weak, but unfortunately the dollar is strong, this will not help the economy. So the government will have no option than to rely on monetary policy. So impact of global economic condition. So because economic conditions are integrated across countries, so many countries now, they are interrelated due to globalization. The Fed considers prevailing global economic conditions when conducting monetary policy. So everybody is watching one another. Bank Negara will be watching what is happening in Singapore. Singapore will be watching what is happening in Malaysia, and everybody will be watching themselves so as to know what type of policy, monetary policy, they will formulate. The Fed's decision to lower the US interest rate, for example, during the 2008 crisis and stimulate the US economy was partially driven by a weak global economic condition. So because the global economic condition was weak, so as at that time, the best thing the Fed could do was to lower the interest rate to stimulate the economy. Transmission of interest rate. So global interest rate are not the same across countries. So global interest rate will vary between countries. So countries with higher rates will attract investors from countries with lower rates. So if the rates are higher in the United States, for example, most investors will shift their investment to the United States. And if the interest rate is higher in Malaysia or Singapore, most investors will shift their investment to Singapore or Malaysia. So they look at which country will offer them the highest rate. If investors leave due to US falling rate, so the Federal Reserve in the United States may believe it should act to prevent rate from falling lower. So given the international integration in the money and capital market, a government budget deficit can affect interest rate of various countries. And this is called the global crowding out. So this is clearly seen in this diagram. So illustration of a global crowding out. So now you already know when there is a shift to the right, it indicates an increase in demand. So you can see increase in quantity of funds demanded from D1 to D2. You can see that it creates a new equilibrium whereby the interest rate increased from high 1 to high 2. in the United States. But in Germany, you can see that it causes a shift in the supply of loanable fund from S1 to S2. And the interest rate, you can see, is still high, but it is less compared to that of the United States. And also, there's a shift in the supply of quantity of fund from S1 to S2. And you can see that the interest rate also is about the same with that of the German interest rate. So what it happens is that interest rate is higher in all of this country, but not at the same rate. This will create a crowding out effect. So there is impact of the crisis in Greece on European monetary policies. This is a very good case study. In the spring of 2010, Greece experienced a weak economy and a large budget deficit. And they have two problems. First problem, the economy is weak. Second problem, budget deficit as a result of too much spending. So basically, they also have inflation problem. So creditors were less willing to lend the Greece government funds. Why? Because they fear that the government may be unable to repay the loan. The European Central Bank was forced to use more stimulative monetary policy than desired in order to ease concern about the Greek crisis, even though this caused other concern about potential inflation in the Eurozone. So you can see, because whenever you increase money supply, it can cause inflation. But there's a problem here that needs to be addressed. And the best way to address this problem is to use a stimulative monetary policy. You solve this problem, you create another problem here. So this is the trade-off when trying to formulate monetary policy, especially at the global level, where you have harmonization of monetary policy across countries, because the European Union is made up of several countries. But one problem in one country can spill over to other country. You can see one country, Greece, has two problems: problem of weak economy and also budget deficit. In trying to solve the problem of one country, you create more problem for the remaining countries in the EU. This is the challenge of monetary policy when there is monetary harmonization among countries. Okay, so I give you 1 minute. You read the summary, try to refresh your memory. Okay, so you can read this slide. Give you 1 minute. Right, so I give you 1 minute So read this summary. Okay, so this is the last slide. Okay, any question? So any aspect of the slide that is not clear to you? So if there is none, so we can use the remaining time to prepare for the next assessment next week. So you have a long time to prepare. So there won't be classes next week.